Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day, there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And we're going to have a great discussion today because we're going to be talking about being fearless. We're going to learn more about that, and being a leader. And a leader is not a term that is bestowed upon someone. We are leaders. And it's not that you're the president, the founder, the whatever, because sometimes the leader might be the person in the mailroom or that volunteer in church or whoever. And so it's very important for us to discuss all these things. And so please join me in welcoming the wonderful Laurence Anthony to our program today. Welcome, Laurence. How are you?
Deb, such a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I am thrilled to be here. Been looking forward to our chat. Thanks for having me.
Yep, we're going to have a great discussion. So let me tell folks just a little bit about you, and then we'll jump into this. So Laurence Anthony is an executive coach and founder of Go Further Coaching. He has over a decade of experience coaching leaders and teams at Fortune 100 companies, including companies like United Airlines, as well as world-class professional athletes, helping them build high-performance cultures and develop resilient leadership. As a former actor and performer, we could tell that from your voice, right? and the pictures on your website, I'm like, oh yeah. Laurence combines storytelling with practical strategies to empower individuals to overcome limiting beliefs, unlock their potential, and sustain lasting personal and organizational growth. So again, Laurence, welcome.
Well, thank you. I have to tell you, as someone who, this might shock you, I do not do well with compliments or hearing my bio played back to me. I just feel like it's one of those dictators or kings or queens who are just like, tell me every title I possibly earned, right? I feel like Daenerys
it's always a
Targaryen.
little weird to hear our bios, right?
Yeah,
And yeah, it's like, and my first thought when I hear mine is, ooh, she sounds impressive. Oh, that sounds funny, right?
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I feel like Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones or something, where it's just like, I'm a breaker of chains,
I
leader of,
know.
like, okay, we yeah, exactly.
Okay, there we go. Okay.
Thank you.
So, well, I always love hearing about my guest's background and how they got to where they are today, because you have had quite the very interesting journey. So tell us a little bit more about how you got to where you are today.
Thank you, Deb. It is such a great question. It's a question that comes up every now and then in terms of what my journey has been.
Hmm.
And it is, people constantly say my journey was
Hmm.
not linear or I didn't think I was
Hmm.
going to get here. And to some element, that is true. Yet I have to give credit to someone who saw this vision from when I was a little kid, and that was my mom.
We were
My
talking
mom,
about her. Hmm.
yeah, we were talking about her before we went live. My mom, when I was a kid in kindergarten, told me you should be a therapist, but there weren't coaches back then. That wasn't
Right.
really a
Hmm.
thing.
Hmm.
She's like, you should be a therapist because I
Hmm.
kept coming home
Hmm.
wanting to talk about people's problems, or other
Oh,
kids would come
okay.
talk to me. So I was a
Hmm.
very empathetic kid.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, again, coaching wasn't a thing and
Hmm.
therapy was not on my radar.
Hmm.
So as I moved throughout life and got involved in a bunch of things, I loved writing. I always loved storytelling.
Hmm.
Ended up going to a phenomenal school in Toronto and studied radio and TV and communication.
Hmm.
Film was totally my thing. Got into film
Hmm.
and was very lucky to get come out of the gates strong. In my
Hmm.
first year, I booked a number of commercials, booked some gigs, booked some
Cool.
films. Had a good
Hmm.
early career there, but I never was fulfilled with the process,
Okay.
right? I love the result, Deb.
Hmm.
I love being able
Hmm.
to tell everyone I'm an actor. I
Hmm.
mean, one of the best things was having my grandmother, my grandfather, who were
Oh.
very important to me,
Hmm.
go to the theaters and see me in a film.
Hmm.
I had not gone to a film, I think, in about 25 years.
Hmm.
She went to go see me in a film.
I can
Uh,
see her elbowing the people next to her. That's my grandson.
that's my grandson. Stop talking, right? It was.
Mhm,
It was a horror film. So if you ever want to question or if you ever want to know a grandmother's or mother's love,
mhm.
my grandmother sat through a horror film with a lot of gore to watch her grandson.
She
So
watched with her hands over her eyes, I'm sure.
I'm 100%. So I enjoyed that journey, but
Mhm.
what I realized, Deb, is that I liked the result. I didn't like the
Okay.
process.
Okay.
And that would show up time and again in
Mhm,
any of the careers that I've been involved with. I
mhm,
was in real estate in New York for quite some
mhm,
time. I ran two restaurants in New York. We got best new restaurant in the
mhm.
country, overseeing that with phenomenal partners. But I was constantly feeling like something was missing.
Okay.
Up joining a coaching and consulting firm where I
Mhm,
had the privilege to go meet and talk to a bunch of different brands,
mhm,
organizations, banks, and I'd end up being in a room filled with sometimes anywhere from 15 to 500 people.
mhm,
And even as someone who's a trained professional, there was different muscle for me. I was no longer
mhm,
acting, I was
mhm.
being Lawrence. And
Right.
what I found is that I loved being Lawrence.
Okay.
And there are people who are phenomenal actors. And sometimes I actually felt a little bit of,
Mhm.
not so much imposter syndrome, but I was like, I'm not in the same tribe as you all because you
Okay.
all love being someone else. I
Right.
like being myself.
Mhm, mhm,
And so I knew again that it was great, but I knew there was something missing.
mhm,
And I found what kept happening in my life is that I'd be trusted by great leaders,
mhm,
executives, sometimes just regular folks who
mhm,
maybe weren't at the C-suite level or any kind of
mhm,
executive level who just wanted to hear from me
mhm,
and wanted to, kind of say, "Hey, Lawrence, talk to me about what you would do here."
mhm,
And I actually found that to be such a privilege, and it is a privilege,
mhm,
and sometimes a little honored because I'm looking up at these folks who I admire and respect
mhm,
for how successful they are
mhm,
or just titans of their industry.
mhm,
And I'm like, wait, you want to know what I think?
mhm.
You trust me?
Right.
And so there was something there. And so I left that firm
Mhm,
and started my own coaching practice, go
mhm,
further coaching. Was there some fear and concern? There certainly was.
mhm,
Yet I had to do it. And I knew I
mhm,
wanted to do it. And
mhm,
so I pushed past that. And it's been phenomenal. We're
mhm,
going on to 2.5 years now.
mhm,
And I consider it to be such a privilege. Billie Jean King said, pressure is a privilege.
mhm,
And I really do consider
mhm,
it to be a privilege to be trusted by
mhm,
folks who've got things going on in their lives who want my guidance or trust
mhm,
me to coach them.
mhm,
Uh, People who are running large scale companies or divisions.
mhm,
So I don't take this for granted. Every time everyone asks me if I have a
mhm.
job, I don't. I have a purpose
Ah,
and I have a calling, and I
mhm,
get to fulfill that every
mhm.
single day.
I love that. And you mentioned that, when we were little, and I'm older than you. Um,
You couldn't tell, Deb. You look
oh yeah,
phenomenal.
yeah, you're, flattery will get you everywhere and the checks in the mail. Um, there weren't coaches. And so, as this has kind of come about, a lot of folks aren't still exactly sure what they are. But as I tell people, everyone needs a coach. Billie Jean King would have had a coach or more than one coach. Michael Jordan had coaches. And to me, a coach is who gives you the truth, helps you through to see some things that you might not want to admit to yourself, or you might not even be able to see. But though I think everybody who is very successful has had a coach. Now, sometimes they call them a mentor, but mentors are a little bit different. I mean, a coach really is that person who's going to give you that hard love, maybe is the best way to put it.
No, you're spot on. You're spot on. I'm glad you brought that to the forefront because there is
Mm-hmm,
still a question about what does a coach do? And
mm-hmm,
sometimes I'll take a
mm-hmm,
consultation call with someone, and one of the things they'll say is, "I've never done this before.
mm-hmm.
I've had a therapist, I've
Right.
had consultants, but I've
Mm-hmm,
never had a coach.
mm-hmm,
Talk to me a little bit about how this works."
mm-hmm,
And I have some phenomenal mentors, and one of the things that was really important to me when I was going into the coaching field
mm-hmm,
was I wanted to make sure that I differentiated myself from other coaches
mm-hmm,
because it is becoming certainly a little more in vogue.
mm-hmm,
I said, okay, how can I treat this with a
mm-hmm,
level of respect? And that's happened across the board.
mm-hmm,
Every industry, I want to make sure that I'm
mm-hmm.
doing it not only at the best level I possibly can,
Right.
but with the respect and integrity.
Mm-hmm,
So I went to school to get my
mm-hmm,
certification, and the founder of the school, Natalie Blaze, who runs the Canada Coach Academy, phenomenal coach and
mm-hmm,
MCC level coach. And Natalie said, and she tells us to all the students, coaching is a partnership of equals.
mm-hmm.
right? And that's what I tell all my clients or
Hmm.
prospects or folks who want to sit down with me. I am not coming from Mount Olympus with
Right.
some
Do, do,
expert
do,
wisdom.
do, right. Hmm. Hmm.
Exactly. I'm not
Hmm.
bringing some expert
Hmm.
wisdom. My job
Hmm.
is to help find what is already inside of you. My
Hmm.
job is to evoke awareness.
Hmm.
I jokingly, but also not jokingly, tell everyone
Hmm.
I'm like Rafiki from The Lion King.
Hmm.
My job is to bring out what is already
Hmm.
in you, to
Right.
help you remember
Hmm.
who you are,
Hmm.
to help you
Hmm.
climb your own pride
Hmm.
rock, to finally be where you're
Hmm.
supposed to be. That's my job.
Right. Right. And I'm a marketing person. That is my background by trade. And so I love that you have your niche, right? Because I think so many folks, we want to do that, but everybody is my potential client. Well, technically, maybe, but it's the old, trying to kill the fly with a shotgun. You might hit it, but most of the time you're going to miss. And so tell us a little bit more about how you decided exactly who it was that you were going to be working with.
It's such a great question. I, you know, the foundation is certainly true.
Mm-hmm.
I'll coach anyone who
Mm-hmm.
is interested in changing their life,
Right.
right? And so it's just, I can't turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had the privilege to go to Italy. I was in Sicily. A dear friend of mine runs one
Ooh.
of the number one resorts
Mm-hmm.
in Italy, Principe di Salina.
Mm-hmm.
And Anita, the owner, said to me, she would watch me interact
Mm-hmm.
with guests there.
Mm-hmm.
We just start
Mm-hmm.
talking. Before you know it, I'm now in a pseudo coaching
Right. Right.
conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I can't turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
I can't turn it off. So I legitimately do enjoy having
Mm-hmm.
conversation with anyone. A
Mm-hmm.
purpose of mine is, I think, one of the reasons I'm put on this earth to help people.
Mm-hmm.
However, to zero in on that, I love coaching people who are interested in getting to another level. That could
Mm-hmm.
be personally, that
Right.
could be professionally. Folks who want to be better leaders,
Mm-hmm.
right? Women who are trying to figure out how to
Mm-hmm.
lead their teams better.
Mm-hmm.
Women entrepreneurs
Mm-hmm.
who have been told this is what it looks like to
Mm-hmm.
be a woman in that business space.
Right.
That's an important thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
My mom played basketball growing up. If there was a WNBA at that time, she would have been in it. She was just
Mm-hmm.
an amazing floor general.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, my brother and I both just grew up with women,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a really, really important thing to see these
Mm-hmm.
really strong leaders.
Right.
And one of the things I love coaching is women
Mm-hmm.
in those leadership
Mm-hmm.
positions.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also get to coach men in
Mm-hmm.
their leadership
Mm-hmm.
positions who have been told what masculinity should look like or
Mm-hmm.
what leadership should look like,
Right.
or what being a boss is.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, when I founded this company, one of the pillars and one of the mandates
Mm-hmm.
was I'm not going to coach just for coaching's sake.
Right.
I want to coach only if I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
change a life, if
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to change an organization, if
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take something from where it is
Mm-hmm.
and make it better.
Mm-hmm.
And leaders are kind of the instrumental in
Right.
how an
Mm-hmm.
organization goes. If you have a
Mm-hmm.
bad leader, it doesn't matter how great the
Right.
talent is underneath.
Mm-hmm.
The company is not going to go
Mm-hmm.
a certain way. If you are a leader in your household,
Mm-hmm.
right, it doesn't matter how
Mm-hmm.
strong you may be in other areas.
Mm-hmm.
If maybe you're a bad communicator,
Mm-hmm.
your partnership or your
Mm-hmm.
friendships or whatever's happening personally is going to crumble.
Right.
So I think that I chose this niche, I chose this path
Mm-hmm.
because I love seeing things operate better. I love
Mm-hmm.
seeing people being fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
And the first tagline and the first motto, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
for Go Further Coaching was to lead, live, and love better.
Ah.
So if you're asking what my
Mm-hmm.
niche is,
Mm-hmm.
I want to work with any single organization, anyone who's looking
Mm-hmm.
to lead, live, and love better.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think you're so right that somebody who says, "Hey, I need a coach," they really are ready to go to that next level. And whatever it is, maybe it is, in business, or in their personal life. But of course, it all ties together, right? It's not like it's kind of like you say you can't turn it off. We can't turn off being the leader. Where if we're kind of the head of the business in a leadership role, then we probably are in our other pursuits also. But it is, I think when somebody says, "Hey, I'm ready to take that next step," I'm going to come back to sports. We all knew that we did whatever, but when we were ready to go to that next level, we had to have a coach. And maybe it was a team sport, maybe it was individual, all of those various things. because we didn't, maybe it's the whole, you can't see the forest for the trees type of thing. We needed that next person or group of people in order for us to go to that next level.
You're so spot on. And I'm glad you brought up the sport analogy. And that's what I tell everyone, because some
Mm-hmm.
people who, especially folks who are operating at a really high level,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I don't want to gender this, but it is
Mm-hmm.
mostly men who will say this,
Right. Mm-hmm.
you know, oh,
I don't need a
yeah, yeah,
coach.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you what I've done. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think I need a coach.
Mm-hmm.
And my response is always, oh, really? Did Michael Jordan have a coach? His
Right.
name was Phil
How
Jackson.
about Tiger?
Oh, well, Tiger. How about
Mm-hmm.
Serena Williams?
Mm-hmm.
How about Wayne Gretzky? Right?
Mm-hmm.
We could just keep going. Tom
Right.
Brady. We can
Yes.
keep going.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? And so I'm so glad you brought that up.
Mm-hmm.
Every single
Mm-hmm.
person needs a coach. Bill Gates is
Mm-hmm.
famous for saying this.
Right.
Famous thing. He
Mm-hmm.
needed a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone needs a coach.
Mm-hmm.
It's a type of coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what ends up happening is if you see folks in one area who, if you have a bad experience with a real
Mm-hmm.
estate agent, you start to think, I don't need a real estate agent. They're all terrible, right?
Right. Yes.
Bad
Mm-hmm.
experience with a lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
I don't need a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
So that is also one of the reasons that
Mm-hmm.
A, getting my certification was
Mm-hmm.
important, reaching the
Mm-hmm.
highest levels are
Right. Mm-hmm.
important to me. And it is those folks who often say they don't need a coach who do
Mm-hmm.
because
Right.
we don't know our blind spots,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And it is like overtraining at the
Mm-hmm.
gym. Some people are like, "Hey, look,
Mm-hmm.
I'm really strong in this
Mm-hmm.
area." Phenomenal,
Mm-hmm.
right? However, what areas have you neglected?
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the reasons that I love to give an EQI assessment, an emotional intelligence
Mm-hmm.
assessment to clients that I bring
Mm-hmm.
on, is because we get to see, okay, where are your strengths
Right.
and where are there room,
Mm-hmm.
where is there room for us to grow? Where is there
Mm-hmm.
room for us to maybe just elevate?
Mm-hmm.
And what we end up doing, I don't look at it as a strength or weakness
Mm-hmm.
aspect. What we end up doing is we end up seeing, oh wow, I am
Mm-hmm.
so strong
Mm-hmm.
in this area. Maybe my patience
Mm-hmm.
is really strong.
Mm-hmm.
However, my impulse control is a little weak.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So what do? We're operating at such a surplus
Mm-hmm.
in one area that we
Mm-hmm.
can actually pull away from this
Mm-hmm.
area and add to
Mm-hmm.
another, and you're still not
Mm-hmm.
going to lose the essence of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons that people are so resistant to change. A lot of individuals and teams are resistant to changes. I don't want to stop being who I am.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I
It's
love
gotten me
who I
where I
am.
am. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Exactly. It's got me to this point.
Mm-hmm.
I am a successful entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a phenomenal
Mm-hmm.
businesswoman. I'm the lead
Mm-hmm.
scorer in my league.
Mm-hmm.
If you take this away from me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be myself.
Right.
That's actually not true,
Mm-hmm.
right? Use a sports analysis analogy. Michael Jordan, right?
Mm-hmm.
When Jordan got into the league, he
Mm-hmm.
was scoring all the time,
Mm-hmm.
won the scoring trophy, was doing all these things, but he was such a great individual player.
Mm-hmm.
It took Phil Jackson, his coach,
Mm-hmm.
saying, "Michael, we're not going to win a championship if you continue to do this."
Right.
So
It
come to
is a team.
it is a team.
Mm-hmm.
And Phil would also come to the same
Mm-hmm.
thing with Kobe later in his career.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I do as a coach is,
Mm-hmm.
okay, where are we strong?
Mm-hmm.
How do you continue to be
Mm-hmm.
yourself? And what
Mm-hmm.
areas can we tweak
Mm-hmm.
to elevate where you are?
Mm-hmm. Right. And I love that you talk about being a team, because I think that's one of the hardest things, especially for a business owner, to realize is I need to have good people around me. I've got these strengths. Well, I do have these weaknesses. So, okay, maybe I'm going to hire somebody who is going to do that. Maybe, I'm not good at sales. And so I'm going to hire a phenomenal salesperson. And I think, one of but it comes with that ego, right? Well, I'm the business owner. Or, the fear. If I admit that I need help, then people are going to, they'll think less of me. Well, of course, that's not true. I shouldn't say that. It depends on how you go about it, because we want people to see, yes, we're bringing this on or learning these new skills or whatever to take us to that next level. I'm not really saying, oh my God, I can't do that. It's, it's not one of my strengths. So let's bring on something or someone who can do that.
Spot on. Spot on. And what you're really talking about there is having the self-awareness,
Mm-hmm.
the humility,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and also the desire to be better,
Mm-hmm.
right? Hence the motto of to
Mm-hmm.
lead, live, and love better,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, when you brought up who do you coach, who are the people that you really want to work with?
Mm-hmm.
I cannot work with you.
Mm-hmm.
I choose not to work with you
Mm-hmm.
if you lack self-awareness,
Right.
if
Mm-hmm.
you have no desire
Mm-hmm.
to elevate and be better.
Mm-hmm.
other because it is a
Hmm.
partnership and a
Hmm.
co-creation of equals.
Hmm.
And I kind of use the example of being in a car, a
Hmm.
little like a driving instructor.
Hmm.
I tell all my clients, you're
Hmm.
driving the car, I'm in the passenger seat.
Hmm.
Yes, I also have a wheel.
Right.
Yes, I've also got some brakes if I do
Hmm.
see
Like our driving instructors, right? Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
exactly. And if I do see an
Hmm.
accident happening, maybe I will grab the wheel,
Hmm.
maybe I will slam on the brakes,
Hmm.
but you know where you want to go.
Hmm.
And for those times that you don't,
Hmm.
my job is to maybe ask you the right
Hmm.
questions to
Right.
evoke that awareness,
Hmm.
right? And to
Hmm.
help guide you that way. But
Hmm.
you have to decide that you want to get in the car. I
Hmm.
cannot force you to get in the car.
Right.
I certainly can't be in the
Hmm.
driver's seat.
Right. And that awareness really is what is absolutely key. We were chatting before, and I'm a big college sports person. Now, I'm a University of Colorado buff, right? So we have this really fancy coach, right? We have,
Oh, you got
Coach Prime.
I hear you guys got someone down there.
Yeah, we got this coach named Prime. And
Yep, never heard of him.
I know, and that has been an interesting process to watch, the whole thing. But the thing with Shadur and Shiloh, now definitely Shadur, has been very interesting this year because let's just say he got knocked down a peg or two. But I loved seeing interviews with him afterwards because for one thing, he told now, he didn't know about his dad's health issues, but he said, I don't want him to come to training camp. I'm on my own now, and I need to learn from these new people. And so he was aware of the fact that, yeah, he was a pretty high level player, but he needed to learn the next level from others. And it's been very interesting because anybody who drives up to a college football practice in a Rolls Royce and flashes his $90,000 watch, you're going to get knocked down a peg or two. But it's been interesting to watch that because he was, and Shiloh also, very much aware of, okay, now it's the next level. Now what are we going to do? And of course, then dad, put on his dad hat and said, okay, I do need to step back and let them go on their own. And I, he is, Dion has freely admitted it's one of the hardest things he's ever had to do with all of his kids is to let them go off and do that. And yeah, just having that awareness to say, okay, I'm ready. Come teach me.
Yeah, spot on. And what a great example because I think it is a little challenging. And I'm guilty of this
Mm-hmm.
as well. I think it's a little challenging to achieve success, maybe at an early age,
Mm-hmm.
or to some things come naturally to some
Mm-hmm.
folks. Of course, you got
Right.
to work at it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but I do think it's a little challenging
Mm-hmm.
to be at one level and
Mm-hmm.
be doing it so well,
Mm-hmm.
or to be awarded
Mm-hmm.
or crowned these
Mm-hmm.
things,
Right.
and then to be able to say, okay, but I'm at another level now.
Mm-hmm. And oh my gosh, I'm fourth on the
Yeah,
depth chart. I might not
absolutely.
make the team.
Absolutely. But
Mm-hmm.
that is
Mm-hmm.
where, we talk about
Mm-hmm.
pressure, we talk about
Mm-hmm.
diamonds, we talk about fear.
Mm-hmm.
These things can
Mm-hmm.
be paralyzing
Mm-hmm.
or they can be motivating,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
Because you can walk into that
Mm-hmm.
situation and say, wait, but I was a top dog
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Dion's son. I
Mm-hmm.
got the Rolls Royce, I got the Rolex, I got
Right.
all the stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you can take that approach
Mm-hmm.
and then you say, but I'm not that anymore
Mm-hmm.
and pout and be upset. Or you can
Mm-hmm.
take that approach and say, okay, that was that level,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but I'm at another level now.
Right.
And I'm gonna shout out my gaming nerds here. If you play video games,
Mm-hmm.
well, when you're a kid or even as an
Mm-hmm.
adult, I do still play video games.
Mm-hmm.
People are shocked that there are levels,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and you get to a level,
Mm-hmm.
you acquire all the tools you need,
Mm-hmm.
right? You get the
Mm-hmm.
trophies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you get the accolades.
Mm-hmm.
You can't stay at that level because
Right.
that's comfortable.
Right. It's boring.
It is boring. It
Mm-hmm.
eventually does get boring.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there
Mm-hmm.
can be some fun
Mm-hmm.
because you're like, wait, I'm winning all the
Yeah,
time. Let me
I'm
have
top
fun.
dog right now.
I'm top dog.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I'm top dog I'm
Mm-hmm.
right now. However, driven,
Mm-hmm.
ambitious individuals
Mm-hmm.
are going to say, I've hit this mountain.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone as far as I
Mm-hmm.
possibly could go at this level.
Mm-hmm.
What's next?
Mm-hmm.
Another mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go climb that one.
Mm-hmm.
And then when
Right.
you get there, you're like, oh, wait a second. I'm starting now at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to
Right.
climb that again.
Mm-hmm.
That's difficult. That's
Uh-huh.
challenging.
Oh yeah.
Yes, and also
Mhm.
inspiring. It's
Mhm.
also inspiring.
Right, right. And you mentioned a word, and I mentioned it at the very start, fear and fearless.
Yeah.
And, I think a lot of times we think as the leader, as the president, as the founder, as the whatever, we need to be fearless. And I'm saying that as one word, right? Fearless. But what you say is we need to think about how to fear less. So make it two words. So talk to us more about that.
I'm so glad you brought that up. It's something that I've been talking about for quite some time. And, someone else I deeply respect, Tim Ferriss, has talked about this
Mhm.
as well. And because I think there's this notion that, well, let me ignore fear. And
Right.
I think we're taught this
Mhm.
as children.
Mhm.
As
Mhm.
children,
Be
we are
brave,
taught
be tough,
exactly.
especially if you're a male, right?
It's absolutely,
Mhm.
especially if
Mhm.
you're a boy,
Mhm.
you're told, hey, no, don't be afraid,
Mhm.
right? Be brave, be
Mhm.
tough,
Right.
ignore it,
Yeah.
right? And
And
then
there's
what ends up,
other words that then come along with it that are bad words.
oh,
Yeah. And so
you
you don't want to be those things.
you don't want to be a coward. You don't want to be weak.
Mhm.
So we have this relationship with
Mhm.
fear where we see fear as an
Mhm.
adversary.
Mhm.
And what I've been saying now for a couple years is, what if we stop looking at fear as an adversary
Mhm.
and started looking at fear as an
Mhm.
ally?
Mhm.
Because adversaries, right, oppose us.
Right.
Adversaries are
Mhm.
there to fight us,
Mhm.
they're there to challenge us,
Mhm.
and they're ultimately there to prevent us maybe from
Mhm.
reaching a destination and a
Mhm.
goal.
Right.
Whereas allies
Mhm.
teach us things.
Mhm.
Allies support us.
Mhm.
Allies provide tools for us
Mhm.
to learn, and we can say, okay, what can we take here?
Mhm.
So what I like to say is fear is a little bit almost like that check engine light in the car.
Mhm.
Is when it lights up, instead of saying, well, I'm not going to drive anywhere.
Mhm.
Oh,
Or I
right.
can't
Something
admit to it.
I
Mhm.
can't admit to it,
Mhm.
so I'm going to ignore it.
Mhm.
No, instead of looking at it like that,
Mhm.
we can look at that and say, okay, what am I missing?
Mhm.
What don't I know?
Right.
Is
Mhm.
this revealing to me that
Mhm.
maybe I don't have as many tools as
Mhm.
I should have?
Mhm.
How can I go gather those
Right.
tools?
Mhm.
When you treat it like an ally, it can
Mhm.
become a learning tool and it
Mhm.
can actually become a friend. When you
Mhm.
treat it like an adversary,
Mhm.
it can become paralyzing.
Mhm.
So I tell everyone, being fearless is impossible.
Mhm.
It is, you cannot operate
Mhm.
in life without fear.
Right.
Body keeps the score, as that
Mhm.
book
Mhm.
talks about. So instead of trying to define nature,
Mhm.
and by the way, it is a biological response
Mhm.
inside
Yeah.
of us. It's
Mhm.
fight, flight, or freeze.
Mhm.
Rather than try and deny nature,
Mhm.
harness it. So
Mhm.
instead of being fearless, how
Mhm.
can I fear less? How
Mhm.
can I ensure fear doesn't prevent me
Mhm.
from climbing that mountain,
Mhm.
from asking that person out
Mhm.
on a date, from asking for that promotion?
Mhm.
How can I instead look at fear and say, you know
Mhm.
what? I do want to step into this
Mhm.
role. I do want to lead this team. I
Mhm.
do want to take this job. If we look at it like an ally,
Mhm.
it can support us. If we look
Mhm.
at it like an adversary, it's there to hurt us.
Right.
Fear less, not be fearless.
Mhm. Right. Yeah. And it is about, again, being self-aware and knowing, oh, and maybe it's that gut feeling, it's whatever it is there. And where we see the issues arise are when we ignore it. And sometimes it is the thing saying don't do that. you know and it's okay to go, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't be going down that path. And that's perfectly fine.
You're spot on. Deb, you're gonna laugh at me. I think it didn't take us long for me to get into a Lion King reference. I think everything we need to know
Mm-hmm,
in life
mm-hmm.
is in the Lion King.
Right.
But
Mm-hmm,
if we think about that, right, when Simba as a little boy is
mm-hmm,
going to Elfin
mm-hmm,
Graveyard, he's like, I laugh in the face of danger, right?
mm-hmm,
I'm gonna be fearless.
mm-hmm,
Well, no, Simba, that
mm-hmm.
fear was there to
Right.
help prevent you from
Yeah.
going somewhere
Right.
that was going to be
Sometimes
dangerous.
that fear is telling you run away.
Exactly. And you have to
Mm-hmm,
listen to that.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
then sometimes,
mm-hmm,
and I get a little emotional with this.
mm-hmm,
Sometimes that fear is there again as an obstacle for us to overleap. Using
mm-hmm,
Lion King again,
mm-hmm,
Simba is afraid of going home.
mm-hmm,
He's afraid of the guilt, of the
mm-hmm,
shame,
mm-hmm,
and that's where I don't want folks to use fear
mm-hmm.
as a paralyzer,
Right.
because I
Mm-hmm,
really do genuinely
mm-hmm,
believe that fear prevents us from achieving our goals.
mm-hmm.
Fear can prevent us
Right.
from being the best
Mm-hmm,
version of ourselves. And I see it
mm-hmm,
all the time.
mm-hmm,
And so if I get passionate about this, if I get emotional about
mm-hmm,
it, it's because I think
mm-hmm,
all, at a
mm-hmm,
teacher, a professor told me this,
mm-hmm,
that we are all uh, little children in adult bodies.
Hmm.
And so I try and speak to that
Hmm.
inner child.
Right.
So if we're operating from a
Hmm.
fear-based foundation, well, I'm not going to do that. I
Hmm.
was told I can't do that.
Right.
I'm
That's
afraid of it.
bragging. That's rude.
Ah,
That's
yes,
whatever, all of those. And those people were trying to protect us,
they
right?
were. Absolutely.
But, they also were stopping us from achieving those next goals, those next levels.
Spot on.
Hmm.
Spot on. And then what happens? That ends up
Hmm.
becoming a thing that we live with and we
Hmm.
sit with and we turn into an adult.
Hmm.
And now we're like,
Hmm.
well, I can't raise my hand
Hmm.
because I'm seen as being
Hmm.
too eager.
Right.
Or I can't go ask that
Hmm.
person if they love to have dinner because I'm afraid of rejection.
Hmm.
So again, I built the foundation of the company on the Lion King for this reason, because at some point, Simba has to look up at the sky. Rafiki takes him. I'm the Rafiki.
Hmm. Hmm.
Say, hey, look, go look
Hmm.
at your father. Go
Hmm.
look at your mentor.
Hmm.
Remember who you are.
Hmm.
And yes, the past can hurt, but
Hmm.
you can learn from it
Hmm.
or run from it.
Hmm.
Fear is the same way.
Right.
Fear is tough.
Hmm.
You can either run
Hmm.
from it or you can learn from it.
Right. Right. And there is that saying, what if I fall? And then the wise person says, but what if you fly?
I love it. I get laughed at because I say that one so often to
Hmm.
another coach friend of
Hmm.
mine. And I think you're absolutely spot on. I
Hmm.
think that's where imposter syndrome also comes in.
Right. Oh,
Imposter,
that's probably one of the biggest fears is, what if I'm found out to be not whatever it is?
spot on. Right.
Hmm.
And so I love that you use that quote of what if I fall? Yeah. Okay. But what if you fly?
Hmm.
Because imposter syndrome
Hmm.
focuses on the
Hmm.
former. What
Hmm.
if I fall? What
Hmm.
if folks find out that I'm, not that great? What if
Right.
I find out I'm not that
Hmm.
great? Imposter syndrome is, it's been misunderstood a little bit over the last few years. Imposter syndrome to me is a heavy
Hmm.
focus on what I don't know
Hmm.
instead of focusing on what you do,
Right.
right? So fear is, I'm not so sure, I don't know, I
Hmm.
can't,
Hmm.
right? And then the other way is, well, yet.
Hmm.
What
Right.
can I do next?
Hmm.
Right? What can I
Hmm.
gather?
Hmm.
So I think questions are a great way to
Hmm.
kind of deal with fear is
Hmm.
ask yourself, okay, what don't I know?
Hmm.
What could I
Right.
learn? And so when we ask these things, moving away
Hmm.
from should to rather
Hmm.
to could
Hmm.
opens up possibilities.
Hmm.
That's a great way to deal with
Hmm.
fear. Like, well, what if I did ask? What if
Hmm.
I did raise my hand?
Right.
What could happen?
Right. What is the worst that could happen? I mean, how many times have we, talked to people and they've said, well, what if they say no? And I tell them, and I mean, did the world stop? Did somebody die? I mean, all of these things. And of course, that answer is always, well, no, right? And so why not? Because, of course, if we don't give them the option to say no, we're not giving them the option to say yes.
So
We're so
spot on.
profound.
You're dropping bars here, Deb, and you're absolutely right. I tell everyone, the answer is always
Mhm.
no,
Right.
unless you ask.
Hmm.
Right? But we focus
Hmm.
so much on
Hmm.
what could go
Hmm.
wrong, and that's
Right.
a fear-based
Hmm.
response.
Hmm.
Entirely
Right.
natural. So
Right.
it does take a little bit of
Hmm.
work to overcome
Hmm.
that natural
Right.
inclination to
Hmm.
say, no, no, I got to be
Hmm.
safe, I got to be
Hmm.
comfortable.
Right.
Because it makes sense,
Hmm.
right? Why would you want to put
Hmm.
yourself into a risky
Right.
position,
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
personally or professionally?
Hmm.
So you have to acknowledge
Hmm.
it, not ignore it.
Hmm. Right. And of course, the important thing is when we get those no's, that we learn from them. I mentioned as we were chatting in the pre-chat that I used to sing, and I used to sing in a theater group when I was in college, and it was a very small liberal arts college, and our director wrote everything that we did, and he wrote a song called "Sometimes the Answer Is No," and the concept of that was sometimes when you pray, you're told no, but there's a reason that you're told no, and so okay, you take those no's. It's like, okay, well, was I not prepared enough? Maybe I was just asking the wrong questions. All of these things, and it's kind of like you're learning from our failures, right? We need to learn from those things, and then you try it again. Maybe not with the same person, company, whatever, but it's like, okay, well, I wasn't prepared enough. So how do I prepare better? Whatever it is, learn from those no's.
Spot on. Learning from the nose
Mm-hmm.
is something that all winners,
Mm-hmm.
all leaders, all
Mm-hmm.
successful
Right.
individuals do. I
Mm-hmm.
tell a lot of folks and clients, some of my athlete clients, you've got to lose before you win.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of
Right.
evidence to
Mm-hmm.
support that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rarely do we see a professional
Mm-hmm.
sports team, or if we look at
Mm-hmm.
individual sports, tennis or golf, rarely do we see these individuals or teams come onto the
Mm-hmm.
scene and immediately win a trophy,
Right. Mm-hmm.
right? Same thing with the Olympics. We
Mm-hmm.
fall in love with
Mm-hmm.
these stories
Mm-hmm.
because of failure.
Right.
We rarely see,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm just going to come out and win right away.
Right. You don't win the gold medal your first time, usually. I mean, yes, there are those flukes every once in a while,
Of
but
course,
mm-hmm.
you have those greats, and as someone of Jamaican descent, I would be
Mm-hmm.
remiss if I didn't reference the great
Mm-hmm.
Usain Bolt here.
Oh yeah, yeah.
There are some people
Mm-hmm.
who are just so phenomenal
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
so great that they can do that, but that's not, by and
Mm-hmm.
large, the majority of
Mm-hmm.
society.
Mm-hmm.
By and large, we have to
Mm-hmm.
experience
Mm-hmm.
loss and failure
Mm-hmm.
before we win. We
Right.
see this in leagues
Mm-hmm.
and teams across the board. Nelson Mandela, arguably my favorite leader,
Mm-hmm.
said, "We win or we learn."
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
that's a
He
process.
didn't say we win or we lose.
There it is. He didn't
Mm-hmm.
say we win or we lose. We
Mm-hmm.
win or we learn,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there is a lesson
Mm-hmm.
in not getting what you were
Mm-hmm.
looking for.
Right.
How
Mm-hmm.
can I level up? What
Mm-hmm.
tools can I get to become a little
Mm-hmm.
bit better? And that's the climb.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Mm-hmm.
also what makes a success
Mm-hmm.
more enjoyable,
Mm-hmm.
is the failure, the loss, the
Mm-hmm.
struggle
Mm-hmm.
before it. If
Mm-hmm.
you're given it, you don't
Yeah.
appreciate
Right.
it.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it's also about who you are listening to and who you are surrounding yourself with. Because let's face it, people, they like to see us fail. Back to college sports. I got to admit, I was kind of happy that Bill Belichick just got thumped, right? But he will, of course, take that and learn from it. And as he says, and as most people, I don't listen to, read, watch, whatever, my detractors. Now, they're there, and social media, ugh, right? But yeah, and but you can be learning from them. Maybe they're saying, okay, your ego got away from you, or you didn't, back to Deion Sanders. The big thing a couple of weeks ago was, hey, you did not manage the clock well. Okay, then how do we do that better? So I'm not saying ignore those detractors and those negatives, but don't get sucked into believing that they're right.
You're you're right. And what I would add
Mm-hmm.
is, it is who you surround yourself
Mm-hmm.
with. And it's one of the things that, you know, as I coach in my coaching practice,
Mm-hmm.
I will constantly tell clients who you're surrounded with,
Mm-hmm.
right? There is, my grandmother used to say this, a phrase from the Caribbean. She would say, "Show me your friends and I'll show you who you are."
Mm-hmm.
And so it is, okay, there are a lot of people who
Mm-hmm.
don't know you who are going to have
Right.
something to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're leading a company,
Mm-hmm.
if you're leading a
Mm-hmm.
team, if you're in a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
there are people who are going to have their own
Mm-hmm.
opinions. Whether they're right or wrong
Mm-hmm.
is irrelevant. I think what's more important is who you're
Mm-hmm.
surrounded with
Right.
and those listening to those
Mm-hmm.
opinions. Because, yeah, I forgot who it was who said this. I think it was some actor said, if you don't have my phone number, right,
Mm-hmm.
to call me, then you
Mm-hmm.
don't know me well enough to have a problem with me.
Right.
And I think there's some truth to that.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
that's the importance of surrounding yourself with positive anchors, right? If there
Mm-hmm.
are negative anchors, people who are going
Mm-hmm.
to pull us down. And
Right.
sometimes those can be those commenters on
Mm-hmm.
social media
Mm-hmm.
or those fans who are
Mm-hmm.
just watching
Mm-hmm.
the team. But the positive anchors are there to
Mm-hmm.
keep you grounded,
Mm-hmm.
to prevent you from
Mm-hmm.
maybe going too far away from
Mm-hmm.
your goal
Mm-hmm.
or too far out into the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a delicate
Mm-hmm.
balance. You need anchors that are there
Mm-hmm.
to prevent you
Mm-hmm.
from forgetting who you
Mm-hmm.
are, but you also need to make sure you
Mm-hmm.
don't have anchors who are preventing you from
Mm-hmm.
growing. And
Right.
so it's that balance.
Mm-hmm. Right. Excuse me. Yeah, because we do need that, those people saying this was what went wrong, or this is how you could improve. If you were told, it's like you said, if you've always been given everything, then and so if you had, say, a coach, maybe that coach told Michael Jordan, you're perfect, you're absolutely perfect. Now, sure, there were things that he did very, very well, but there were things that he didn't. Like you said, he did not exactly know how to be that team player. And so we need those people, but to me, it's maybe the spirit in how that constructive criticism is given. I did a post on social not long ago where I said, I'm fine with criticism. If it's constructive criticism that is designed to help, that's fabulous. If it's destructive criticism that is designed to knock you down, go away.
I love that you said that. And I really do try and approach my personal and professional
Hmm.
life with as much empathy
Hmm.
as I can.
Hmm.
I fall short just like anyone else. Yet we live in a society
Hmm.
where we keep witnessing folks who enjoy to see others fail.
Right. Oh my gosh, at every level. And and I think that's the hard thing. And it is easy to get sucked into that, right? If your boss, your parent, your teacher says, ugh, you know, then it's really hard to get over that.
Yeah.
But if they go, ugh, here's how we can make it better, then it's
There,
okay.
and
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
second part is what doesn't
Mm-hmm.
happen so
Mm-hmm.
often, right? We get sucked into just the ugh. But
Mm-hmm.
I love that you said that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a reframe,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot more effort to
Mm-hmm.
frown than it
Mm-hmm.
does to smile,
Okay.
right? I
Mm-hmm.
may be guilty of smiling often
Mm-hmm.
because I know that there are things that are going to happen
Mm-hmm.
throughout life that are not,
Right.
or even the day, that are
Mm-hmm.
not going to be enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
However,
Mm-hmm.
okay, do I want to focus on destructing
Mm-hmm.
myself, or do I want
Right.
to focus on criticizing myself, or do I
Mm-hmm.
want to focus on was that a bad
Mm-hmm.
day or was that just a bad
Mm-hmm.
moment?
Right.
And I don't know how much I don't know how much effort we put into trying to change the minds of those who have got their feet dug into the sand, who are
Mm-hmm.
looking to kind of just be negative,
Right.
right? I don't think we can control that. I
Mm-hmm.
do think what we do have control
Mm-hmm.
over is how we show up,
Mm-hmm.
right? Warmth
Mm-hmm.
is certainly much more
Mm-hmm.
powerful than force.
Right.
So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the only
Mm-hmm.
responsibility we have is how we're
Mm-hmm.
showing up in a way
Mm-hmm.
that is going to be a beacon,
Mm-hmm.
right? And hopefully some of
Mm-hmm.
that light can spread.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I tell people, smile at that person at Starbucks. You might be the only person who smiles at them that day. And so how can we bring that forward? And it's funny, on my cancer journey, I have so many people who say, oh my gosh, you're always so positive, you're always so upbeat. Okay, well, first of all, that's what I let them see. Now if I'm having a bad day, yeah, there are people, but of course my husband goes, oh no, she has bad days. And but it is, it's what are we putting out there? And but it is okay to say, today is not a good day. I need a nap. I need help. I need whatever it is, because that comes back to, it makes us human, right? If somebody is, Miss Polly positive all the time, well, you really don't want to be around them. That's kind of ugh. But we also don't want to be around the negative Nellies, and so it's about being authentic. And when it's not going well, it's okay to say it's not going well, and here's what I need.
Deb, it is so true. And I know myself, I'm guilty of this as well.
Hmm.
And you have to practice what you preach.
Hmm.
And there are times when it's a tightrope that I walk
Hmm.
because, I'm in a purpose and a profession in
Hmm.
which I'm relied upon to guide and coach others.
Hmm.
So it's like, okay, but where does
Hmm.
my energy go? When
Right.
Lawrence is
Hmm.
having a bad day, or
Hmm.
Lawrence is feeling sad,
Hmm.
or Lawrence is feeling
Hmm.
angry, or whatever the case
Hmm.
is, what do I do with that?
Hmm.
And I found that, when I post on socials,
Hmm.
whether it's a story or a reel or whatever the case is, I find the most engagement I get
Hmm.
is when it's not necessarily a polished,
Hmm.
perfect looking reel
Right. Hmm.
animation, which I love, of course.
Hmm.
It is the ones where I am just talking and I'm just
Hmm.
open and
Hmm.
vulnerable. Vulnerable. Brene Brown talks about the importance of
Hmm.
vulnerability.
Right.
Vulnerability is what allows us to
Hmm.
connect with each other
Hmm.
because in the absence of vulnerability,
Hmm.
we're creating a facade,
Hmm.
and it's
Right.
very hard for anyone to
Hmm.
relate to an image of
Hmm.
perfection,
Hmm.
because none of us are. It's
Hmm.
much more common and
Hmm.
relatable to connect with an image
Hmm.
of, oh, wait, you're struggling too. I'm
Hmm.
struggling.
Right.
Let's connect.
Hmm. Hmm. Right. And we do want to know that they're human, and that they go through those trials and tribulations. But I think that is, again, that's where people who are in a leadership position, that's where that fear comes back, right? if
Yeah.
i if i admit that I sometimes need help, well, then they might think that I'm not up to the task at all.
Absolutely. Or, another aspect, Deb, and you'll see this in a number of different
Hmm.
communities. And if you're coming from, and I've seen this with clients or
Hmm.
friends, if you're coming from a community that was maybe disadvantaged, or you're
Hmm.
coming from a
Hmm.
community in which there was a lot of strife,
Right. Hmm.
then what you end up
Hmm.
doing is you put a protective layer.
Hmm.
I can't be
Hmm.
vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
because vulnerable equals weakness.
Right.
Weakness means someone's going to take
Mm-hmm.
advantage of me. And that could either be something as
Mm-hmm.
severe as death
Mm-hmm.
or
Right.
robbed or whatever the
Mm-hmm.
case is. So
Back
you
to the
learn to,
Lion King. You get eaten.
you get eaten. I
Mm-hmm.
love that. Look,
Mm-hmm.
I've got Deb now on the
I
Lion
know.
King.
I'm on the Lion King bandwagon. Mm-hmm.
There you go. So we
Mm-hmm.
learn at a very young age,
Mm-hmm.
protect yourself.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Don't be vulnerable because
Mm-hmm.
being vulnerable means you could get
Mm-hmm.
eaten.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not entirely true,
Right.
right? There are those
Mm-hmm.
people who definitely are there
Mm-hmm.
to, as you said, bring you down a peg or there
Mm-hmm.
to harm you. Yet
Mm-hmm.
there are also folks who are there to help you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
if we don't reveal that we
Mm-hmm.
could use help
Mm-hmm.
or struggling,
Mm-hmm.
then people aren't going to help us.
Right.
We
Mm-hmm.
don't get to the levels
Mm-hmm.
that we're looking to get to
Mm-hmm.
on our own. We
Mm-hmm.
get there by admitting,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you know what? I could actually use a little help here.
Mm-hmm.
You know something I
Mm-hmm.
don't. So vulnerability is
Mm-hmm.
not a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
It is actually a tool to
Mm-hmm.
connect to
Mm-hmm.
get to another level.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. And yeah, it is about, just saying it's okay to be saying that. But it's a challenge, right? Because we want people to think that we're the best. And I don't care if it's a celebrity, an athlete, a politician, a leader. We don't want to admit that sometimes we do need help. Or even just, I was just in Iowa at dog shows, 10 days worth of dog shows. Oi. And I know it's a very weird thing that I do. And but I was also in charge. But there were several times where I said nap time.
Hmm.
And I knew that if I didn't go and rest for a little bit, I was not going to be able to function. And of course, the people around me knew, let her have that break. And so it wasn't, and then of course, what we all start talking about is I need a nap, I need a nap. Oh, all these various things. But it turns into maybe a way for us to bond with each other when we say, I'm not absolutely perfect.
Or I don't know
Mm-hmm.
yet,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And admitting
Mm-hmm.
that we don't have the
Mm-hmm.
answer
Mm-hmm.
is not a sign that we are
Right. Mm-hmm.
unprepared
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
incapable of the task.
Mm-hmm.
Admitting we don't have the
Mm-hmm.
answer is
Mm-hmm.
an invitation to surround ourselves with
Right.
people who may help us
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
find the answer.
Right. Right. Yeah, I used to do media training for executives, right? And I would tell them that it is perfectly fine to say, you know, reporter asked a question. It is perfectly fine to say, I don't have that answer. But then it should be followed up with, I will get it for you.
Spot on. Spot on. It's a line in Pursuit of Happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And the character, Chris Gardner, played by Will Smith, he's in a job interview
Mm-hmm.
and he says, I'm the type of
Mm-hmm.
individual who, if I don't know the answer,
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you I don't know,
Right.
but I'll
Mm-hmm.
go find it.
Right.
And
Because we all have a pretty good BS meter.
of course, we do. We do. And sometimes we
Mm-hmm.
try and outdo people with the
Mm-hmm.
BS
Right.
meter.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But there's much more integrity
Mm-hmm.
in being able to say,
Mm-hmm.
I'm unsure or I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, but I will
Right.
find out.
Mm-hmm.
Then what we're
Or
really
it's worse if you give the wrong answer.
even worse, even
Mm-hmm.
worse.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're really revealing when we
Mm-hmm.
say, I don't know, but I'll go
Mm-hmm.
find out, we're
Mm-hmm.
sharing that we
Mm-hmm.
are open to learning,
Mm-hmm.
open to being
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable, and open to being better.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Yeah. I worked for a CEO who had no problem when people would say, what about X? He would say, I don't know, but I will get you that information. And if he had, even if he'd said yes, no, right, and then gone on to the next question, or worse, ignored him, we all went, oh, okay. But of course, here's the important thing: he always got the answer. And so that is the really big thing. If you tell people, I don't know, but I will get that information, I will learn how to do it, I will whatever, you have to take that next step.
You're right. And I think this comes from, and I wonder what your thoughts are on this. I wonder if this comes from this notion that if we're on a stage or if we have a platform
Mm-hmm.
or if we have a certain title or
Mm-hmm.
role, therefore we must be infallible.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's this
Mm-hmm.
notion of, well, you're an executive. You should know all the answers.
Right.
You're a
Mm-hmm.
teacher. You should
Mm-hmm.
know all the answers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wait, you're in the
Mm-hmm.
clergy or you're a
Mm-hmm.
spiritual leader. You
Mm-hmm.
should be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it's so detrimental
Mm-hmm.
because of that relationship
Mm-hmm.
then with the speaker or the
Mm-hmm.
coach or the leader and the person within the
Mm-hmm.
organization or the church or
Mm-hmm.
wherever or the team.
Mm-hmm.
that relationship becomes misconstrued
Mm-hmm.
because then there's an expectation of
Mm-hmm.
perfection from
Right. Mm-hmm.
leadership,
Mm-hmm.
and there's an expectation of, but wait, if you are not perfect, therefore you're not the
Mm-hmm.
leader, and now I need you as
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
someone else to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, hey, we're actually on this
Mm-hmm.
journey together.
Mm-hmm.
I may be in another
Mm-hmm.
area, maybe I'm a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
advanced, right? But we're on
Mm-hmm.
this journey together, and there's going to be
Mm-hmm.
some times we learn from each other.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Yeah, you have lots of sayings, and I love this. So one of them is be a thermostat, not
Yeah.
a thermometer. Now tell us more about that.
This is something that I believe wholeheartedly.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of touched on this a little bit when we were talking about fans on
Mm-hmm.
of a sport team.
Mm-hmm.
And being a thermostat and not a thermometer, I wish I could claim credit for that. It's something that folks can't even attribute the origin, but I've brought this in for my own.
Mm-hmm.
What that really means is we have two options.
Mm-hmm.
Thermometers take the temperature of the room,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we're often
We
uh,
respond that way. Mm-hmm.
we respond to
Mm-hmm.
people around
Mm-hmm.
us. We respond
Right.
to
If
the
they're
environment.
angry, our anger level might go up.
There you go. We
Mm-hmm.
start to match that. Maybe if they're
Mm-hmm.
sad, we
Mm-hmm.
match that. So
Mm-hmm.
thermometers or people who are thermometers end
Mm-hmm.
up matching the energy
Okay.
of the people in the room and the
Okay.
external factors. Thermostats set the temperature of the room.
Ah.
Thermostats are
Mm-hmm.
individuals who can walk into a room
Mm-hmm.
and it can approach things with kindness
Mm-hmm.
or warmth or empathy
Mm-hmm.
or empathy. By the way,
Mm-hmm.
that also goes to the opposite end.
Mm-hmm.
Individuals who are thermostats
Mm-hmm.
are constantly angry and
Mm-hmm.
constantly
Right.
upset,
Then that's what.
changes the
Mm-hmm.
entire
Mm-hmm.
room. And I've
Mm-hmm.
worked for leaders when I
Mm-hmm.
was a lot younger who were thermostats,
Mm-hmm.
good and bad. I
Mm-hmm.
worked for bad thermostats
Mm-hmm.
who set a culture of
Mm-hmm.
anger and
Right.
frustration and
Oh
stress.
yeah. Oh, I've had bosses that thought nothing about swearing and throwing chairs. And
Yeah. And
now
what
I
kind of
didn't work
culture does
there
that create?
long,
You
but
bet. You
hmm
bet. And what
hmm
kind of cultures that end up
hmm
creating
right.
for the
hmm
environment? Creates
hmm
a very stressful,
hmm
tense environment.
hmm
And then you end up, I'm sure you have as well,
hmm
we end up working for thermostat
hmm
people who have created a
hmm
culture of
hmm
empathy and kindness and
hmm
warmth and
hmm
approachability.
hmm
And then the entire
hmm
company then
hmm
has that culture. So
hmm
I tell everyone, be a thermostat, not a
hmm
thermometer.
Right. I love that, because it is, and now let's, sometimes you have to match, and be that thermometer, but as soon as you can, start changing things. It's kind of like one of those, they tell people that if you are in an argument and someone is yelling, if you yell, they're going to yell, right? But if you drop your voice and respond in a calm manner, they're going to hopefully calm down. I think of it as like the road rage thing, right? If you've gotten out and you're yelling at each other, well, it's going to escalate. If you say, I'm really sorry, what can I do? Well, it's really hard for them to keep yelling at you. So yeah, how can you kind of bring that temperature down? And let's be honest, sometimes you need to raise that temperature, right? Back to sports. You got to get the crowd into it. All of those things, but you need to figure out what is appropriate for the situation.
You are spot on. And I keep telling you you're spot on because you happen to know a few things. Yet one of the things that I'll add to that
Mm-hmm.
is just this notion of, okay, the two words I like to tell everyone, the two words that immediately would de-escalate a
Mm-hmm.
situation are I understand.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely
Right.
believe when we get to a level, either in an argument,
Mm-hmm.
personally or professionally,
Mm-hmm.
if we can de-escalate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, folks sometimes will ask, well, what does de-escalation look
Mm-hmm.
like? How can I do that?
Mm-hmm.
Just try this.
Mm-hmm.
Try this tool. I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Because understanding does not mean agreeing.
Right.
It just means
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing you.
Mm-hmm.
I may not agree with your
Mm-hmm.
perspective, but I can understand
Mm-hmm.
it. And that is something that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
happen often within
Mm-hmm.
relationships, personally and
Mm-hmm.
professionally.
Mm-hmm.
It's this lack of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we get conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And what do we often hear? You're not
Mm-hmm.
hearing me. You're not
Right.
listening to me.
Mm-hmm.
If we slow things down
Mm-hmm.
and simply say, I understand.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I do social media management. And so there are times where we get complaints, right, for my clients. And I tell them, first of all, don't ever ignore a complaint. Never, ever. And I don't care what it is. Do not ignore it. And the faster we can respond, the better. And what I tell them is what we want to say is we understand what you're saying. And then there are frequently times where we say, I'm sorry this happened. We're not saying we're to blame. And I think that's the thing that people think saying, I'm sorry. No, we're just saying we're sorry this happened. But then, of course, what you really want to say is, here's what we're going to do to try to make sure it doesn't happen again. And it's really funny because I've been doing this a very long time, and almost never do we have somebody who comes back and says, yeah, but, right? In fact, most of the time, I'm guessing they probably don't even read our response. Our response is for everybody else who reads it, right? If we had said, yeah, but, they're like, well, I don't want to work with them. I don't want to go there. I don't want to whatever. But if they see, oh, okay, they're a reasonable person, organization, whatever, okay, then that's good.
You're right, because we can't necessarily control the reaction. It's not necessarily our
Right.
responsibility to control someone's emotional response.
Mm-hmm.
It is our responsibility to think about interpretation. And I've said this before, and I'll say it to my clients, is that there's intention and interpretation. And often conflict happens because we focus so much on intention. Well, I didn't mean to say this.
Right.
I didn't mean to offend you. I didn't mean to offend the
How
customer.
dare you take it that way?
Exactly. And what I like to tell everyone is the phrase "no offense" has a 0% success
Oh,
rate.
I know.
Right?
Because it's always followed with the word but. No
Exactly.
offense, Laurence, but
There-
you are,
I've heard nothing else. I've heard nothing else after,
Mhm.
right? So if we focus less on intention and focus a little bit more on interpretation, we're more likely to have a better dynamic and better conversation, because intention is, this is what I want to say.
Right.
Interpretation is, how could what I want to say impact you?
Right. Well, oh my gosh, we are at the top of the hour. This has been so much fun, and I have to have you on again because I think this is something that is very important, and especially because I think we're seeing more and more conflicts. Whether it's on social, whether it's in person, all of these various things, and so how can we as leaders help de-escalate, help tone things down? All of those various things. I was sharing, I live in Atlanta, and when we were having some pretty major issues several years ago with some shootings and things like that, the mayor at that point, she was this little bitty woman. She went marching in, and I'm sure her people were like, oh my God. She went marching in and she shook her finger and she said, you will go home, and you will go home now. And they all went, yes, ma'am. And I tell people she mothered them. Now that's not normally going to work, but she knew how to de-escalate that situation. But she also said, I hear you. I know why you are upset, but now it's time to go to the next step. We've got to stop this and here, but yeah, oh yeah, and there was nobody that was going to say no, ma'am, and they ma'amed her. I mean, it was the funniest thing in the world, but she knew how to do that. And so I think it's very important with everything that we're going through. How can we be that leader, acknowledge that people are feeling happy, sad, angry, whatever it is, and then how can we go to that next step? And so yeah, I would love to have you on again. But until then, for the people who are saying, I need a coach, Laurence, I need you, how do they find you, and what are the services that you provide?
Well, thank you, Deb. You can find me on socials. Instagram is Go Further Lawrence, LinkedIn as well. A lot of interaction with great individuals and organizations there. And of course, our website at www.gofurthercoaching.com. And you can reach out. We've got a phenomenal team, and I check every email with my team, so you get direct access to me. And I love what you said there. I'd love to be back on. It'd be such an honor. I think what I'd finally say is, if we look at things consistently as I'm giving something up, I'm giving real estate up, then we're less likely to connect, right? And that fear of, I don't want to lose. But if we remove some of that fear and say, okay, how can I connect more? How can I have a better conversation? How can we go further, pun intended, together? Then we're more likely to have a better conversation.
I love that. And normally I ask for a final thought, but that was it right there. And so I'm Deb Creer. I've been having so much fun talking with Laurence Anthony of Go Further Coaching. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.